All right. Welcome in, everyone. My name is PH Irwin, a communications coordinator here at SAANYS, and I welcome you to another SAANYS Pro Learning session. Today is another Power Hour webinar titled Mastering the Master Schedule with Jason Stanton. And as we begin, please remain muted, but feel free to use the chat room throughout the session for any questions, and our presenter will get to you. And please be aware that this session is being recorded, and it will be available on our YouTube channel after the webinar. And I will turn it over to our Director of Professional Learning, Karen Bronson.
Thank you very much, PH, and thank you everyone for being here today. This is one of our power hours, and as many of you may know, power hours are intended to be relatively short, 1 hour skill builders for school leaders on different topics. And this one is one in particular that I think many of us as school leaders could use, and that is how to get better at mastering the master schedule for secondary levels. So without too much delay, I'm going to be turning it over very quickly to Dr. Jason Stanton. Jason is Director of Careers and Student Services for East Islip School District, and we're very happy to have him here with us today. We know that this is the time of year when you start to think about your master schedules, and we know how um, integral the master schedule is to so many aspects of your school's success. So we're very pleased to have Jason with us today. And Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I know it's a busy time of year. And, I always say this is actually the worst time of year when you're an administrator, the first 2, 3 weeks when you're back from winter vacation. You just get slammed with everything, especially if you're in scheduling mode. So I appreciate everyone taking some time out to come in. If I had 45 minutes to teach someone the master schedule and what you needed to know, this is what I would want to know. So I hope you find this interesting. It's not, I was saying it before everyone kind of came on, the master schedule is not a theory-based object that you think about in terms of like educational theory, but it is boots on the ground, and it is probably one of the most important things when it comes to actually running a school. We're going to focus today also on secondary master scheduling. So although there are plenty of lessons here for primary schools as well.
Jason, one quick reminder to everyone, actually two reminders. First of all, please stay muted unless there comes a time when you would like to unmute to ask a question or make a comment. And also, I'm not sure if we reminded you, but this session is being recorded, and the recording will be posted on the SAANYS website in a day or two. Okay, thank you.
So this is just a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. I'm just going to start out by talking about a couple of terms that I'm going to use throughout the session that you should be aware of. You might be here today because you have experience scheduling. You might be here today because you got gifted with the master schedule, which sometimes is seen as a punishment. I think it's probably the most fun job in education, but maybe I'm crazy. That's just me.
Ooh.
I'm going to give you a schedule timeline for which you can use in your own district that kind of makes sure that you stay on target with everything. I'm going to go through some best practices that are kind of like a general overview of what you should be doing. And then I'm going to go through my practices, which are a little different than the way some books and the way some other people build master schedules. So you can kind of see it in action. And then I'm going to show you some practice exercises that, I'm going to work out for you so that you can see some of the stuff that I kind of do in action. And then we're going to take a quick look at some computer scheduling. I am an infinite campus school, but almost all the programs now have some kind of whiteboard embedded into their system. So I'm going to show you some of the concepts that we're going to talk about today, kind of in action with computer scheduling as well. Just, Karen, thanks for the introduction. Just a little bit about me. So, this is my 25th year in education. 17 years I've been building master schedules. Some years I've built them for myself. Some years I've built them for other people. Some years I've had to rebuild them because of turnover in districts. I'm the current Director of Careers and Student Services for East Islip School District. The career portion of my title deals with career and technical education, and the student services portion deals with school counseling. I'm also an executive board member of the Suffolk Directors of Guidance, as well as a SAANYS Region 1 Professional Development Coordinator here out in Suffolk County in New York. I'm the father of 2 children that require regimented mindfulness practice. And that's important to understand because when you build the master schedule, you have to be very patient. And as my children test me constantly, the master schedule will also test you constantly as well. I'm a career and technical education enthusiast. On the side, I'm a musician and I'm a food and beverage consultant. So what I mean by that is basically I make cocktail menus and I go into restaurants and I basically teach them how to make schedules for their staff. So my skills in master scheduling kind of came out of when I was way younger and I was working in the food and beverage industry. One crazy thing about me, I have never watched a full NFL game in my whole life, but I have won 6 out of 8 seasons in fantasy football, strictly by going by statistics. And again, this is another skill that you need with master scheduling is to look at the statistics, look at course requests, look at student requests to kind of see where it's best to lay everything out. So I've been very successful, I would think. I have watched plenty of high school games, but not one NFL game in my whole life. Maybe like a Super Bowl commercial here or there. A couple of things when we talk about the master schedule and what it is. The master schedule, by definition, is a school's operational framework. The person who builds the master schedule is the person that controls the building. They control the rooms the teachers are in. They control student placement. They control basically everything that has to do with what's going on in the business on a day-to-day basis. So that's an incredible power to wield. It's also an incredible amount of pressure because when a teacher doesn't get what they want, they're knocking down the door to your office. Why do I have 3 periods in a row? Why didn't you move my classroom? So on and so forth. It also impacts the resource allocation and the educational opportunities of the students. A poor master schedule will eliminate or limit the educational opportunities that a student has. And that's an important concept that when you work in a school district, especially with central office administrators, they need to understand that from the get-go because they have to give you the resources necessary to build the master schedule. So what does that mean? Did they give you enough class sections to cover the course requests, which we'll get into in a few minutes? A successful master schedule creates a successful academic atmosphere in a school. If the students all get their first requests, get all the things that they wanted, usually their behavior patterns are very different than if they have to sit in classes that they didn't want to be in to begin with because they conflicted out. So it's important that you maximize your staff and maximize student success. The number one thing when it comes to master scheduling, if there was one thing that anyone takes out of this today, is you have to watch your seat count. Anytime that someone calls me or someone shoots me a text message and says, hey, Jason, I'm having problems with this in my master schedule, etc., my response is always the same. Did you check the seat count period by period? What that translates to in English, if you have 1,000 students in your building, you need 1,000 seats across however number of periods that you're in. If you're in a 9-period day, like I am, you need 1,000 seats in every single period. In the high school, this is usually fairly easy to accomplish. As you go down, middle school becomes a little more difficult and elementary school becomes even more difficult than that. But the main thing to remember is that whenever you're having a problem in your master schedule or you're facing something, you can't figure out what's going on, the first step is to always look and check your seat count to make sure that you have the correct number of seats per period. So the foundation of any master schedule is student course requests. What do the children want? Okay, that's the driver. How you collect it comes in a variety of ways. Many people nowadays, they have in almost every system, be it Power School, eSchool, Infinite Campus, there are ways to collect this data online. The students can enter it manually. Teachers can enter course requests. If a student wants honors class, if a student's going to be recommended for honors classes, student's going to be recommended for MTSS courses, teachers can do that directly in the system. Also, there's new features such as the academic planner, which allow students and counselors to plan out all 4 academic years, and then you can pull the course request right from there. My personal preference, technology is great, but when it comes to course requests, children are planning out their whole academic year, there can be a loss of communication. If a teacher can sit in a classroom and just say, you go to AI, you go to MTSS, you go to honors, you go to Regents, you go to AP, you don't go to AP, without any conversation with the student, that's a big problem for me. Prior to all the technological innovation, maybe, we're talking at this point, maybe 15, 16 years ago, the old way was you did it on paper. Students walked around with a piece of paper and they wrote down what they wanted. They spoke to their teachers. It created, conversation. In my district personally, like we went back to that 5 years ago because those conversations weren't happening. It was too easy, for teachers just to click a button. There's no conversation. Students would show up in the school counselor's office and not understand why they weren't being recommended for certain courses when they had numerical grades that would have required that. So while everything online is great and it's speedy and it's fast, personally, if there's no conversation, that's a problem. If there's no review period by administration, that's also a problem as well, especially for like MTSS and honors, because the question always to the counselor from the teacher in the next year, how did this kid end up in my class? Well, he was recommended. By who? By your own department member. Here's the paper where they signed, right? It's easy. There's tracking. Some of these systems have a difficult time tracking who changes what within the system. So if you're working with one of those systems, I like the paper forms. Again, that's just me. But there should always be multiple forms of communication between students, parents, counselors, and teachers when it comes to this, because once the schedule is built, it's very hard to make changes. I want to take a second just to talk about some historical data. When you first start your master schedule in the preceding year, you should always look back at the previous year. That's usually done in what's called a master schedule report. Most systems have that, and that will show you in the current year where all the class counts are. So it'll show you seat counts. It'll show you where students, what periods had the most students in them, which periods had the least amount of students in them. That's important stuff to look at because you can go back and check how many course requests there originally were. So for example, if you had a course that started with 30 student requests, but now it's week 2 of the school year, and that's now down to 10. That's important historical data to remember when you go into the scheduling season the next year, because maybe that's a course you don't want to run. Did that happen 4 or 5 years in a row? That's a course maybe you want to put on hold for a little bit. Do you constantly have students dropping down a level? You're running AP statistics, it's full, there's 30 kids in each section, but by mid-year, you're down to 15 kids. Well, you lost a bunch. So what are we doing here? Is that a teacher change? Is that, again, a course that maybe we have to put on hold? Is there more preparation necessary in the lower levels in order to make sure that course gets filled? How do the students feel? So if you're not communicating and you're not looking at that historical data, there's a piece missing. So you should always be looking at that prior to the start of the next scheduling session. The schedule talks to you. It speaks to you in that way. I don't mean to sound like play. I said it wasn't like theoretical, right? But like, it does tell you and show you what you want. You have to know where to look. So just a little bit to understand some of the language. There's, multiple types of courses, but you can boil them down to really 3. If you have one course running, that's called a singleton. All right. So normally this is like in your APs, you could have one section of AP statistics running in a year. That's one course that's running. Wherever you put that course in the schedule, that's very important. Middle level, high school level also, you're looking at your music ensemble groups. Those are usually singletons as well. The larger the singleton, the more of a driver it is in the master schedule. So the more students want it, the larger it is. And the opposite is true the other way. But you have to make sure that wherever you place those courses, that's going to create a cascade effect through your schedule, as you're going to see later in the presentation. You wouldn't want to put, for example, 2 AP singletons that are housed by the same grades. So if you have one section of AP US History and AP Lang, let's say, you wouldn't put them both period 1, because now those kids are also sharing. That then is going to cause a conflict in the schedule that you cannot be fixed until you move the class. Doubletons are offered twice daily. So if you have 2 of something, they're offered twice. A little bit more flexibility, very common again in advanced courses, and you can get a little bit of a better accommodation in student needs. This is important, more important if you have doubleton science classes, because they usually have labs attached to it, and you can block out 3 periods if they're not placed a certain way. And then tripletons, they're offered 3 times daily, so you have 3 of a course. This is usually core subjects, and this allows for some class balancing and also provides more flexibility. Anything above 3, you're usually all right with, but then you, again, I'm going to go back to what I said in the beginning. You have to always watch that seat count. So even though you have 9 periods in a day and you maybe have 9 sections of English to spread out, you don't necessarily want to move all your English classes across 9 periods. You have to check those seat counts. And the last term I want to go over with everyone before we get into the nitty-gritty is the term wheels. Courses that run every other day or semester that create a complete scheduled period. These are your 8A classes, your B-Day classes, or your semester classes, and I gave you 2 examples there. Most students go to gym on an 8A, and then they'll have another elective flipped off of that on the B-Day. In this case, I put art. Doesn't matter. It's interchangeable. And then, you know, the most common one in New York State is government and economics in senior year. So semester 1 going to government, or semester 2 going to economics. Okay, any questions so far before we continue? Because if you don't understand these basic concepts, it's going to be tough. I'm getting thumbs up. I can only see like 2 people, but that's all right. Thank you, Kelly. All right, so I wanted to give everyone a sample timeline they could have. I know that I sent Karen the PowerPoint, so you know you don't need to take screenshots or anything like that. They'll send it out to you. But this is a sample timeline of how you should kind of build your master schedule, how and when you should be collecting information, and how you should be communicating out things to the families. Just going to move everyone over for a minute. So in October, you'll create your curriculum guides. What are the course offerings for the year moving forward? So my curriculum guide was finished in November. It was posted, and that's for the 26-27 school year, next year. This is the first communication step. You then have to input your curriculum guide into your student management system. That's fairly straightforward. There's really nothing crazy about that. It's just important that this is the kickoff to scheduling. This is the kickoff to when you're going to start doing the work. It's important that the courses that are in the curriculum guide reflect those that are running, and you don't want to eliminate courses after this is put out into the public. So you want to keep that in mind, that you don't want to start changing things at this point. December or January is a great time to do a curriculum fair at night after hours to highlight your courses. Many districts have teachers that come and present. Some districts have administrators just presented. There's no wrong answer here. It's whatever's best for your district. Some districts have been doing it virtually since COVID times, and they have not done a night anymore. They just do videos. Again, however you slice it, it doesn't matter, but there should be some kind of experience for the students to speak to the teachers, to learn about the various courses that have to be offered. I consider this communication step 2. So now we've communicated twice that this is the curriculum that we're offering for the following year. When I became director, I started individual student meetings with the school counselors. And initially, they were the ones to input the student requests. They would review everything that the teachers had put into the system with the student, talk about it, and then they would finalize everything in those student meetings. This is probably the best thing that I did as a director, because it allowed for an individual experience for the student to speak to their counselor, review a 4-year plan, talk about some of the courses they want to get into junior or senior year, especially if they're in one of the younger grades. And it allows them to really kind of sort out, are there programs that the school's offering that's, pretty targeted? Like I have a cosmetology program here that starts junior year. So that's a triple block. So students have to schedule themselves a certain way in 9th and 10th grade to ensure that they're still going to meet the graduation requirements to get into that course. So it's important to have a 4-year plan and to have counselors set up a 4-year plan with all their students. So that happens between January and February. Ideally, and this doesn't always happen, the ideal time to complete all this is by February break. And then when you get back from February break, you have a week or two just to kind of catch everybody up and grab anybody that you missed. Again, how you decide to do that, I spoke about that already. Is it online, is it paper, or is it a mix of both, right? But February and March, you're going to create your section tally sheet and your staff course placement guides. I cannot stress enough, you really need to do this by hand, and I have not run into a system that creates a section tally that's accurate. So there are tools within all student information systems that pop out, this is the number of course requests, that's always right. But it also will pop out, these are the numbers of sections that you need for next year. And people have used that to determine their sectioning. Well, guess what? At that point, your old schedule from last year is probably in there. And if you did something to play around there and drop down seat counts, or you mess with something, it's not giving you an accurate count. So the only thing you can pull out of the computer and trust is a student course request. So whether you don't always trust what the system is spitting out as far as sections, and you shouldn't be planning based on that. You should be planning based only on student course requests. I've made that mistake before. This presentation could really be titled, "How many mistakes did Jason make over the past 17 years, and this is how he fixed them?" April and May is your build. If you are in central office and you're in this presentation, please allow your master schedule 6 to 8 weeks to build the high school schedule, 4 to 6 weeks for a middle school, and 4 weeks for elementary school. And those are all minimums. That will get you the build. That doesn't necessarily get you the finalized product. But you want to at least, give that person that much time to do it. If you are the scheduler, that's basically, what you should allow, and those are scratch builds. As you get better with it, you can be faster. But that's a pretty good estimation of what you'll need, especially doing it for the first time in any of those things. I probably didn't mention that I build both the high school and middle school schedule for my district. So you can imagine looking at that, what that looks like for May. May is the ideal time to talk about and discuss new courses that are going to be offered the following year. So this year, we would look at courses that would be offered in 2027 in the spring. Everyone's mind is always kind of wrapped around, well, scheduling is happening, we're just building things. But that's the spring than the previous year is the time period to talk about new course offerings. Okay, because if you remember back, we had individual student meetings. So part of that meeting is, well, what courses are we offering here? What courses could we be offering here that you'd be interested in? And if you're going to create curriculum guides in October, September, October is not the right time to be talking about new classes because new courses usually need to get board approved prior to being put into curriculum guides. So you're never going to hit this deadline if you're approving new courses in October. So those conversations should be occurring in May. June 1st, I usually say, is when you should be balancing and locking your schedule and then having the counselors go in to complete any sort of cleanup that needs to happen. The idea is that by the last day of school, every child should be able to walk out with a schedule completed. We know that this can't happen because we have summer school. We know that we have to wait for grade changes. We know that, but by and large, you want everybody at least scheduled for the following school year so that over the summer, the master scheduler can make final adjustments, look at balance sheets and find problem areas where things can go so they can start heat mapping everything out for the fall. You'll notice there's no September up here because September is just chaos. You're just trying to make sure that everybody gets where they need to get and fix any student issues where they didn't get courses they needed to get. So what are some best practices? Well, the first best practice would be start with your singletons. Which one's first? You always go largest to smallest. And then the same thing departmentally. Small departments to large departments. So it's opposite, right? So your musics would go first, your ensemble groups, but then your smaller departments would also, singletons would also need to be scheduled. These are usually your family consumer science departments. Art departments usually fall into this category, departments like that. You need to place AP courses and specialized courses strategically. Do you have a program like cosmetology like me? Yes, that needs to be placed strategically because it's triple block, morning and afternoon. Do you have an auto shop like me? That needs to be scheduled based on, when are they coming to clean the auto shop? Because you have to have outside people come in for that. So what are those outside things that courses need to be placed strategically? You have certain external constraints that you need to worry about when building a schedule. Teacher certification is number one. Can't have any people teach a class that they're not certified for. Do courses require separate AP training, AP seminar, AP research? Traveling staff. Are you going to have people travel between building? Do you have dual enrollment courses in your building? Those people have to get approved by the college. Normally they need a master's degree and then some experience. So those courses can only be taught sometimes by one or two people. And then when is the facility available? How big is your gym? How many gym classes can you put on in a period? Is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? Anything else that anyone tells you is simply an illusion. I need to teach first period because I'm a morning person. I need the last period off because I just can't deal with kids' ninth period. That's illusionary. You also need to account for some room restrictions. This is usually your science classrooms. Those that have specialized labs sometimes have specialized rooms as well. Lastly, you should consider department preferences, meaning teacher preferences. What do I want to teach that day, that year? And then is there teaming involved? And that's usually in the middle, that's usually at the middle level. That's that creates its own separate type of restrictions. Does anyone have any questions about this before we move forward? Okay.
Hi, yes, Jason, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can you please go back to, and I was trying to take notes, so I missed the description. For starting with singletons, you started by saying schedule your largest sections first and then department. Can you just explain that one more time? I'm so sorry.
Sure. So when I say largest singleton, that's like your music ensembles, the ones that have the most seats available. So music ensembles usually sometimes can have 100+ seats in them. And then you want to schedule your smallest department to your largest department singletons. So at bare basics, you would start with art and then move into your English department, social studies department, so on and so forth down the line. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. Some more best practices. Part 2, you have to balance teacher loads. One teacher that teaches 5 of the same subject, one teacher that teaches 5 different subjects. That creates animosity within departments. Sometimes you can't do it any other way. But someone once told me the term, and this is a bad term, everyone should feel a little bit of pain. Meaning, if everyone can do 3 preps, everyone does 3 preps and everyone feels it a little bit. If someone's doing something crazy, then never make promises that next year will be better, because you don't know next year will be better. I can tell you that. You should consider duty assignments within a building too when doing how you're assigning your teachers. Sometimes, it's depending on how you do the course assignments, you can knock all the teachers out of doing cafeteria duty. You have no one to cover your cafeteria then. So you may have to flip how things are assigned that way. Do you have planning period requirements? So is there a period for a team period where all teachers need to be together? Is there a period where all English teachers are off to prepare together? So that needs to be done, in advance of the schedule as well. That needs to be blocked out. We spoke about facility constraints already, and we spoke a little bit about shared staff. But one thing to know, how far is the building that the teachers are going to when they travel? For me, middle school, high school, they're across the street from each other. I only need 1 period of travel time. Other places they may be going across the cities. They may require more. Do you have part-time teachers? Part-time teachers shouldn't be scheduled like 2 periods in the morning, 1 period 9. That would be bad, because then they have to stay the whole day when they could be picking up sub-assignments potentially in another school district or in another building in the district as well. So you want to keep that in mind as well. And lastly, you have quality control measures when your schedule is done already. You want to balance your class sizes. I have always been a proponent of gender distribution, to try to distribute females and males equally among the courses. Are you following special education compliance rules where you have balance? You're not violating anything in like inclusion classes as far as the numbers. And then you have schedule maintenance throughout the year. You have add drop period management in September. Is there, 2 kids left in a 2nd period class and there's 2 open seats in a 7th period class? Can we move them and then make, another section of global history to lower class sizes? Do it. Mid-year, you should be looking. Government and Echo. How many kids failed government the first half of the year? And now we have to open up another economic section. And, maybe there's a spot we can remove a government section to make that happen. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Every decision that you make should be recorded. Somewhere I keep a legal pad kind of next to me when I'm doing stuff, just so I know and I can backtrack into that. I also keep notes in the system as well, which I'll show you. Shared documents are a big problem. And what I mean by that is if you have shared documents with people, you don't always know that changes are happening. So I always recommend that things get emailed to you. I'm changing my teacher assignments for next year. I want X so-and-so to teach something different. Okay, we'll email that. So it's timestamped so you know which one you're looking at, right? If you're doing it on a shared document, don't expect them as scheduler to look back at stuff when they've already built it and already assigned everybody. So keep that in mind. I instituted at some point, that June 1st date, everybody meets with the principals to review all their teacher assignments to make sure everything was, as they want. Last year I just did it, individually with the other academic directors and then sat with the principals separate. But that's always a good time to kind of meet and chat about who's teaching what in the following year just to make sure that, if there's anything you want to talk about among you, you can speak about it. All right. Before we move on, any questions? Okay, perfect. All right, so my method. So we spoke a little bit about the singletons. This is how I do it. So I start with my lounge ensemble groups. Then I move into world language, and I do world language before I do anything else, because these are usually the singletons that students spend multiple years in. So it's a shame when a student spends, 4 years in French classes, maybe 7 if they started in middle school, and then senior year they can't take, the final year of French. So I make sure that this is kind of, at the top of my list when placing the singletons. And then small to large departments, and we spoke about that already. Now, the next thing I do, which is different than most people, is any of the lab classes I wheel together with PE and health courses. I build the whole department because this is the department that deals with certification more than any other department. So this is usually the hardest one to get right. And you want to make sure also that they're getting the physical education classes in the right spot, or the health courses if they're meeting every other day. Then I move into doubletons and tripletons, and I go by grade level, 12th grade back to 9th grade. Then I line up my semester wheels, which I'll show you in a minute. Then I break the schedule down into different schools that share elective courses. So I've placed my elective courses, I've placed my doubletons, my tripletons, I've placed everything. And I view it now as there's all these different schools in my building, and they're going to share these elective courses. So the first school that I build is inclusion. They have to usually get access to certain singletons, doubletons, tripletons. Then I build my self-contained courses second. I do this second because I want my self-contained students to follow one of my inclusion sections, because sometimes these students, as the year develops, may be academically inclined to move up into an inclusion class on a trial basis. So example would be, if I have an inclusion section running first period, that might be also when I have my self-contained English class running. The third school that I build is my advanced placement school by grade level. Then I build my honors school, because these are usually doubles and tripletons too. And lastly, I will build out everything else, because these are usually 4 or more courses. This is way more front-end work, but it allows more accurate course placement and visualization of conflicts as you go. It's way easier to do it this way and then find the problems than to just kind of build all the singletons, the doubletons, the tripletons, and you start to lose track of where these things are. And you have to backtrack through the schedule to find out, well, why are all my inclusion students not getting something? Well, if you built them all first, you could check all the inclusion students to make sure they were getting everything they needed to get. And then so on and so forth down the line. All right. So I'm going to show you some of this stuff in practice now. So when we talk about elective wheels, right? Take a look here. Here's an example of a middle school schedule. So these are teamed. Here's the yellow follows the yellow, and the green follows the green. So we have teacher A, who's the English and social studies teacher, teacher B, who's the math and the science teacher. In this middle school, which is my middle school, all the 6th grade students eat lunch period 4 and period 5. That's also where they take the music courses. So a chorus child will have chorus period 4, and then they would eat lunch period 5. Period 6 is the elective period for this team. Period 9 is the elective period for this team. And period 7 is the elective period for this team. But look what I did here. I messed this up on purpose. So only this team in this 2-team school has access to French. None of these students have access to French. But this team has access to Spanish. So the way that I should have built it was this way, to make sure that both teams had access to the foreign language. But I also have a problem now too when I did that, right? Because I only have one fax teacher, let's say. And now I have 2 periods of fax. So realistically, I can flip them. And we can move that there. Now everyone get their language. And even if I have a double certified teacher, I can do it this way, right? But remember what I said, we still have this fax problem. So now we fixed our teacher conflict as well. So it's important when you're looking at your elective wheels that everyone has access, the most students have access to your singletons. Any questions? All right. So let's go to the science and PE wheel. What happened here? So if you look here, you'll see off of every lab, I placed a PE course. So not only do I complete my whole science department and my whole PE department, which is usually the hardest departments to complete, I'm making sure that each lab creates a complete period for the students, because it's terrible when a student has to take a study hall here because this is sitting here. So you bang up 2 periods for the students in this, if that's the case. So again, normally when I receive phone calls, hey, I don't know what's working out, check your science classes. And check your wheels with your PE courses. The smaller electives, like this one right here that runs 8A, let's say I knew that this group was like 10 or 11 students, right? My PE classes usually have more seats, so I'm just putting a health class there against this one. I wouldn't waste the 33 seats that I have to wheel against, a seat of 10. So that's keeping my seat counts high. Every science teacher loves this. I love to have my labs in the middle and then my periods like this, and that's great. This, if you notice here, is a doubleton in the schedule. But instead of, I've now banged up 3 periods for these students that they can't get electives. So to put a singleton here, bangs up 20 to 30 kids in this block and 20 or 30 kids in this block. So while this looks great and it's doable, it's not always the best thing to do when you have few sections of that lab. The difference here, if you look at the Earth and Space Science, you see I have multiple sections. I did it here too, but I have other sections to pick up those students if I was to put a singleton here. Here, I don't have that luxury. So I wouldn't put a 10th grade singleton in period 3 here. Any questions?
Hi, this is Dan. Sorry, I run into this a lot with the sciences. So what would you recommend to do outside of that? I might have misheard you if you
This you
mentioned
mean?
it. So yeah. So if you have the biology the second and fourth, and then those labs third, because I find myself doing that a lot, but I am finding myself that it causes me some other issues. Where would you recommend putting those labs instead?
So if you look at my other labs, I spread them out a little bit. So let's look at like honors chemistry, right? So you see I have honors chemistry period 7, and then the lab is running period 8
Yep.
here on B day. And then I have it opposite that way. So now
Thank you. Sorry if I missed that.
no, you're good. So for all these students now, right? They only have to worry about period 4 and period 5. And then these students don't only have to worry about period 7 and period 8. So if I was to put a singleton here in period 8, these students who want honors chemistry would just float into this section.
Yep.
But if I put a singleton here, there's no way for the kids to get biology. They're going to constantly conflict out because there's only one place they can get it. So if I did this, and I can't, my cells are not merged. But if I
Oh,
move
that's
this
okay. I
lab,
get you.
if I move that lab there, then if I put a singleton here, these students could just take this lab class instead,
Uh-huh.
because this would be where the lab was. So that's why when you look across, even though I did it here, I have other sections, other places for these honors earth science kids to pick up these courses. So my science always looks like a mess because it looks like this straight across. Usually.
Yeah, I initially thought to avoid that because I saw my science is heavy, but hearing you say that and what I'm living recently, I'm gonna switch it up a little bit and see how it goes. Thank you.
Don't worry, the teachers won't like you like me. All right. And the same is true for your semester 1, semester 2 wheels. Okay, so I just have semester 1, semester 2 wheels. You want to make sure if students are allowed to drop classes semester 1 to semester 2, they have somewhere to go. So here, just as an example, if I had a student that didn't like accounting, but they picked it because they liked the business course, they can move into Wall Street semester 2. Same thing here. If a kid didn't like marketing, they can move into medical terminology or criminal justice in semester 2. So I try to keep as best as I can, I try to keep at least 2 options per semester period in the elective areas. I had extra sections here of sociology and criminology at some point whenever I made this Excel sheet, but this would be like the outlier. So that's just another little like tidbit that I picked up along the way, is to kind of try to run everything in parallel like that. This is an example of a staffing sheet. I will not take credit for that. This came from my now superintendent. He brought it with him when he came over 9 years ago. The best thing I can tell you about this sheet is right here with the way that we figure out the sections for the ICT, because we actually subtract them out and then add them together here. So we know exactly how many sections total that we need here. I've seen many staffing sheets or staffing breakdowns that miss this, and then they don't have enough sections going into the school year. So that's one thing to keep in mind, one thing that you can take. Steal it from me, it's great. And if we were to look at like a schedule on action, this is kind of how I set up, if you're using a separate whiteboard, this is how you would set it up. I try to set all my singletons up like before I build, right? This isn't built, mind you. I just put all my singletons in the first row, my doubletons, and then so on and so forth. And remember I told you about those separate schools. There are my separate schools, right? So when I start to build, this would be an example of how I would do it on, that whiteboard. Orchestra kids usually don't play, band and so forth and so on. My lunch periods run 4 to 8. So I have a lot of seats here. So I'm trying to eat seats up period 1. I'm trying to eat seats up period 9 by putting large ensemble groups. I have my, again, French 4, Italian 4 students usually don't do the same thing. So I have some languages running here. And then I have 3 different schools, of inclusion. These students, for example, I just have chosen math class. They're taking stats and data science. So this group would move here to here to here. This is your non-music group. These guys would move here to here to here. These would be the music students because they're open here. This is another music group. Okay. I avoided for all of them the robotics elective, and I moved my self-contained students this way. And I looked in my course requests to know that all my self-contained students didn't need computer-aided design as a course. If they did, then I would have to move this course. Maybe they didn't want advanced automotive, my other singleton here in the schedule, it would go here. Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Specific to a middle school building 6 through 8, what are your suggestions or any guiding advice on if we're running into difficulties and students are selecting 3 musics? That kind of binds up our schedule, especially in 7th and 8th grade. Any advice on placement for those?
So they're selecting all 3 ensemble groups?
They sure are.
Okay. 7th and 8th, you can split your 7th grade among, how many lunch periods do you have? 4?
We have 3, 1 per grade level.
3, 1 per grade. Stop that.
Okay.
So
My
you
teachers will come for me, but okay.
That's all right. No, you can a solution. I mean, you can email me. My stuff will be at the end of the presentation, but I have to look at it.
Okay.
A good thing to do would be to split the 7th graders up among 3 lunch periods, and then keep the 6 and 8 separate. We went up to 4 for that reason. So when you schedule your music, they have to lose lunch. If the music's every other day or every day.
Yes, every other day.
Yeah, so usually splitting the lunch periods up fixes that problem.
Okay.
So you run a 7-8, you can run a 7-8 lunch, period 5 and period 6, let's say, combined, if you didn't want them to mix with the 6th graders, and then run the music that way.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a good question. And just an example of how I would do my AP school. When I do my schedule, so I don't use a board anymore, really. I do all this on paper. I kind of lay everything out. I'm lucky because I have a gigantic table and a separate office to do this in. But small creature comforts, as they say. I take all my singletons and I put them on top of the sheet, whatever I'm building, right? Whatever my school is, and I do the same thing with my doubletons. I don't usually worry too much about tripletons. And then I begin to lay out my grade level AP. So, in my school, well, I don't know, my fake school that I built, everybody wants AP US History. So I got 9 sections of it. I was able to spread it across, no problem. I was specific with my doubletons, though, to make sure that if kids want a computer-aided design and AP stats, they can go here. And if they wanted Autoshop, they could go here. And I have a singleton chem lab, which again, I put over my doubletons to make sure that these kids could they get their courses here or over here. So it's just a quick example of that. And my AP Lang, which I have here 6 courses, when I laid this out, now I'm just looking for balance and seats, right? So I have 4 here, 3 here, 4 here, 4, 3, 4, so on and so forth. I have at least 3 different sections running each period. So I'm using this one for balance. Okay. I'm going to pop out and show you guys Infinite Campus real quick. Yes, I would like to continue. I would like to log off. I can't show you much because it's got student information in it, but I just wanted to kind of show you like what the whiteboard looks like. And like I said, most systems are the same. I will give a huge shout out to the building administration, East Islip. If I can't see anybody, if you're here, they do a tremendous job putting together those schedules, those Excel sheets. And I stole them all for my presentation. So thank you guys. The first thing you always look at when you go in your student information system, are you in the correct year? Otherwise, you will make many mistakes and cause a problem. I'm going to go into this year just for a second, but if you have Infinite Campus, it's called the schedule board. But everything that you do should be multiple sessions, so that you can always go back if you messed something else, and you label them the right way too. So you can see I can go back and you can look how I built this whole schedule last year. So you see I have what I was doing here, what I was doing here, so on and so forth. Label everything. It's always good to have one unloaded schedule, by the way, and one loaded schedule at the end, just in case. And I'm just going to flip you into here real quick, because I know we're running out of time. So it will tell you here, I loaded this already, but it will tell you I've satisfied all the requests for English 6, and those are the number of seats I have left. So it helps to guide you a little bit when it tells you the seats. And the same thing is true down here. I just loaded the 6th grade up. But look, this guy, it's telling me something because it's yellow. It's telling me that I need more sections because there's only 6 sections. So I would need to add here. That's a good check, because if you have your scheduling sheets in front of you, you have your staffing sheets that I showed you before, you maybe didn't put enough sections in. So that's a good check in these systems now. Just about everyone does. Power School does this too. eSchool I'm not too familiar with, but same thing here. And then you have your loader. You can see I can control. I have to move the video, sorry. I can control the student balance per class, the gender balance like I was talking about before. They added minority balance a couple of years ago into here too. The discipline tool is great because it'll help depending on if everyone's logging everything in Infinite Campus, behavior record wise. When I load the schedule here using this tool, it'll keep those students away from them. You know, so most administrators should do this, just so you know, right? If you want an easy year next year. And then special ed balance also. I tend to start at 50 and then play around with it when I'm looking at like what's going on. But those tools are available to you too. I'm just about out of time, so I'll take any last questions if anyone has it. I just want to thank everyone. Thanks SAANYS for having me. No pun intended, it was good scheduling. So I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jason. If anybody has a question, feel free. But we will send you the slide deck that you've been watching. So thank you, Jason, for that too. And the recording will be posted on the website. I just want to say, Jason, that East Islip and all of the school leaders there, principals, they're so lucky to have you. As we did this, the old knot that used to come in my neck when I was first faced with responsibility for scheduling as a principal started to come back, that old tension. And Jason gave you so many great tips, you know, all the listeners, so many great tips. I'm going to give you one more tip that Jason didn't mention that works great for scheduling, master scheduling, and that is bargaining. I recommend it highly. I couldn't do it. I don't know why. My brain doesn't work this way. It wouldn't work this way. I couldn't do it. And I was so fortunate to have such a great big group of colleagues at Shenendehowa Central Schools, my professional home for 1,000,000 years. And literally said, hey guys, can't do it. But here's what I can do for you. I had a lot of skills that I could swap with them. I could write their parent communications home, proofread, anything in the world, you name it. and it all kind of worked out because I know that on every team, there are some folks who are so good at this, and others of us who just kind of really struggle with it. So thank you, Jason. This was terrific.
Yep. And just so you know, when you get the slide deck on the back slide, that is really my information. You can call me because
That's
when I was
great.
doing this, especially the first time, I had no one to help me, and it was
Yep.
very frustrating. And to take classes on missed schedule are extremely expensive.
Yep.
And
And excruciating.
if I had to recommend one book, if you're starting out, it's the 10 Easy Steps by Stephen Kusin. So I just put that in there, and there's a link to my curriculum guide so you can see how I set everything up.
Thank you. Jason, one really quick question, and that is, does AI have any place in any of this? Gemini, you name it, whatever.
That is a good question. So many SIS systems have the ability to build a schedule for you. I would probably tell you it does not understand teacher contract. It does not understand the humanness behind what teacher is best for students in certain subjects. It doesn't understand sometimes certification areas. Even though you tell it not to build 4 periods in a row because it's a contract violation, it will just do it. There is, the idea to clone or not to clone, right? Do you build the schedule 1 year and then clone it the next year and play around with it? You can do that if you remember where everything is, but student requests change each year. The number of sections change. So depending on how much of a change, you can clone a schedule and play around with it. There is another school to build parts of it and then let the computer do the rest on top of it. And people are successful with that. And that, again, that will always be determined on how stringent your teacher contract is. I have an extremely stringent contract in East Islip that I have to follow. So I've done it 2 or 3 times and I've always had to just redo it. If you're going to use it, I would probably tell you should build your singletons, your doubletons, your tripletons, and then your science and PE at the high school level and then let it build it on top of it, because it does not understand elective wheels either and to keep periods open.
Thank you. Kelly, did you have your hand up?
I did. I have a quick question. Jason, we're in a school of about 1,000 students. We have 3 lunch periods and they're all mixed grades. Do you have any secrets on how to balance the lunch periods? Because we have 2 lunch periods that are full and 1 that's sort of empty.
Is your course request just lunch?
Yes.
So lunch 6, lunch 7, lunch 8 as course requests?
Right.
Put them in by grade level?
They're not by grade level. No, they're just.
I know they're not. What system are you using? Power School or
no, school tool.
School tool? Okay. So if you do a course request for grade level lunch instead of just lunch, you can control the number of students that are going into each period that way.
Oh, okay.
The more that you do by request, the better off you'll be. Otherwise, you have to hand schedule them.
Yeah.
So if you wanted 50 8th graders, 50 6th graders, 50 7th graders in a period, you just set the lunch period like that, where there's 50 seats, and it'll balance it out for you when you load the schedule.
Oh, okay. Haven't tried that. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I was also a little surprised to hear that students were allowed to request 3 musics. You know what I mean? There were very clear guidelines in our district about how many of each thing students could request. It was also very, very point well taken, Jason, when you said that by putting the paper forms back, you brought back the conversations between the students and the teachers. It really seems like that is a vital part of this process. So thank you for that. Not everything is accomplished by, pushing the buttons. That's an important reminder.